It's funny because I've realized that most of us don't actually get stuck because we're not doing anything. A lot of us get stuck because we try to do everything at once. And what I mean by that is that when we feel like we want to make a change finally, and we hit that moment, that rock bottom, or whatever it is that's made us realize that, you know what, I need to get in shape. I need to start getting my finances in order. I need to start working on relationships, whatever it is. We try and do absolutely everything at once to fix that. And a lot of the time, the stuff that we're trying to fix isn't actually broken, but we take it upon ourselves to do absolutely everything at once. And it feels productive. But you know what? More often than not, that's when things start to actually get worse. And that's exactly what I want to talk about today. In my last few videos, I've talked about identity. I've talked about consistency. I've shown you what I do on a day-to-day basis to build the life that I want, which isn't anything special. It isn't anything fancy, but it relates to those things. It relates to consistency. It relates to backing up the identity that I'm building. And today I want to talk about something slightly different that is going to allow you to actually build the life that you want. And that's about taking a step back and not trying to fix absolutely everything at once, but instead focusing on one thing that is going to get you to where you want to be, or is the thing that you want to actually do with your life. And that's what I want to talk about today, because fixing everything at once, it feels like progress. But in reality, it's often panic from ourselves that we sort of disguise as something like discipline. We do so many things at once, but we're not doing them that well. So we wake up and we've ticked off this to-do list, this checklist of so many things that we've done throughout the day. And it feels like, we've been productive. But in reality, we might have done 20 different tasks and spent an hour or half an hour on each of them, but none of them have actually moved the needle forward. And that's what I want you to think about today, because you might have so many things that you're focusing on and so many things that feel like they're fixing that problem that you're trying to solve, but most of them probably won't be doing much. And that's what you need to think about. And through this video, I hope that you're going to take a step back and actually think about things a bit more clearly and allow yourselves to do that. Because one of the best things that I've learned through my life is that taking a step back and thinking is one of the most productive things that you can do. Right, so let's dive into this then. Where does this all begin? Where does this trying to fix everything mentality start? And it starts the moment that awareness turns into pressure. So what I mean by that is that awareness that something needs to change. That awareness that you're not in your best physical shape. That awareness that your mindset is a bit off and you're not feeling your best mentally. That awareness that you need to step up and start doing things financially. You need to make the progress in the relationship, build connections, whatever it is. The moment that you start thinking those things and actually want to do something about it, puts pressure on yourself. Because you've realized there is something that I need to change. And now you want to change it. And you want to fix it, as people say. And I don't think that most things need fixing because they're not broken. You're not broken. All they need is a direction and you to show up each day. So what we do instead, as a lot of us do, is we try and fix absolutely everything at once. You want to get a partner. Okay, I'm going to start doing ice baths. I'm going to cut out absolutely everything from my diet. I'm not going to eat carbs. I'm only going to eat protein. I'm only going to eat fiber. I'm going to go to the gym 7 times a week. I'm going to ruin my body by doing that. I'm going to overtrain. I'm going to work 18-hour days and only sleep for 5 hours and all this stuff. That's what we do. Our method of fixing is focusing on absolutely everything at once and trying to perfect that. Now, even just listening to me talk about this now, doesn't that sound a bit too much? And what I want you to understand is that I'm not telling you not to focus on these things, because yes, improving your diet, going to the gym, going for walks, working on one of your side hustles or your main hustle, trying to put yourself out there a bit more, connect with other people, talk to other people, learn things, read books. All these things are brilliant habits. But if you take a step back and think, am I actually doing any of these things right now? And if you're not, then imagine trying to do all of them at once. It's tough. That is tough. Because you haven't been doing any of them and now you're trying to do all of them to fix this thing that you think's broken. And that comes from that awareness, like I said. That awareness then turns into pressure, because the awareness should bring you clarity, but instead it brings a load of pressure for you to do all these things at once. Suddenly your body, your mindset, your habits, your routine all feel like problems that need fixing right now. And yeah, we can work on these things, but instead of choosing intensity and pressure, why not choose a direction to focus on? And a lot of this comes down to, as humans naturally, we think that being busy, being productive, doing more gives us control. But it's actually the opposite. I've spoken to a lot of successful people. I've done things myself. And the more things that you try and focus on, the worse the quality is going to be and the less productive you're going to be. And that is not just me saying that and from other people. That's psychology. That's how your brain works. Your brain doesn't work as well when it's overloaded with things to do. And that's why one of the most simple things that I say to a lot of people is, instead of having your 10 things on your to-do list or 20 things on your to-do list on a day-to-day basis, write one thing that you need to do today. And if you get that done, then it's been a productive day. And then you can do other things after that. It doesn't mean, you do that thing and you just stop there if you've got hours left in the day. No, you make sure that you get that number one priority done, and then you can focus on other things as well if you have time. And I think that you should apply that principle to your life. Rather than doing more, keeping busy, thinking that you're feeling productive because you're doing so much on a day-to-day basis, when in reality, you're probably not moving the needle forward that much because you're just focusing on so many different things that the one thing that you really do want to work on is being neglected slightly. Try and do less, but put more focus and more direction into that. Because your brain can't hack all these things that you're overloading it with to try and work on when you do notice that something needs to change. And that's what we do. More routines, more rules, more structure, more discipline. And yeah, those things are great, but in the right direction they are. And I need that to sit with you and for you to take that in and to think about that. Because doing more doesn't mean more control. It doesn't mean better results and better outcomes. It just means more stress, more pressure, and more often than not that much progress in the direction that you actually want. I want to talk to you now about something that is very important when it comes to trying to fix everything at once and building the life that you want. Because when you're trying to build the life that you want, when you're trying to improve, when you're watching YouTube videos, maybe like this one, when you're reading loads of self-help books, when you're doing all these things to try and get yourself back on track, it's brilliant. But when you try and do all these things at once, when you try and work on everything at once, as I said, you overload yourself and overload your mind. And what that then leads to is something that is called burnout. Now, I think a lot of you would have heard of burnout before, and it's not a nice thing to experience. Now, I experienced it myself last year. Burnout is not a good thing. And more often than not, what it comes from is trying to do too much at once, as we are talking about today. By you trying to fix everything at once, you're putting too much on your plate, and it's just going to lead to burnout. And that doesn't always look like collapsing physically or mentally. It just looks like your life and your work and the things that you're trying to focus on losing color. And what I mean by that is that things that you actually used to care about or things that you wanted to work on start to feel heavy, start to feel like work, start to feel like they're weighing you down. The progress starts to feel forced. At the start, it might have been brilliant. You know, you started doing all these things, like I say, to try and fix yourself, and it felt great because you were doing so much. But then you wake up and you think, I've got to do that all over again. I've got to do all these things, and it starts to feel forced. And that's not good. And it starts to look like rest, making you feel guilty for having rest days from your fitness routine, from work, from whatever it is. You think that you can't rest and you need to be working 24/7, otherwise it's not a productive day. And look, you need to work hard in life to get to where you want to be, for sure. That's why I'm sat here recording YouTube. It's why I do what I do. It's why I show up every day in different ways. But it's all about having a balance as well and allowing yourself to rest. And when I say rest, it doesn't mean, you have to go to a sauna for the whole day. Rest can look like taking a day to step back and think about things that you want to work on. It can mean journaling things down, writing down how you want next week to look, what you want to focus on next week. But feeling guilty for doing that is one of the most counterproductive things that you can do. Because what I've learned through life and through work and through absolutely everything is that taking a step back is one of the most productive things you can do. And I will never stop saying that. Because it allows you to think. And thinking is one of the best things and most productive things you can do to further yourself and to further the things that you're working on. And that's going to allow you to build the life that you want. And even though you're feeling busy, even though you feel productive because you're doing a million things at once, you still feel behind. And that's a sign that trying to fix everything at once, it's not working. And this is what I mean. When you're constantly trying to fix yourself, it's a physical thing. Your nervous system never really settles. You're constantly in that fight or flight. And when people hear fight or flight, they think, running away from tigers or fighting literally. But you constantly working, constantly being alert, constantly being stressed, thinking, I need to fix this. This needs to be fixed. And it's not getting fixed. That's constantly making your nervous system heightened. And that's not a good place to be, both for your physical health, but also for you trying to build the life that you want. How can you do that when your nervous system is in that mode? So rather than always bracing, always trying to correct things, always feeling switched on, sometimes one of the best things you can do is just switch off for a bit. Take a breather. Take some thinking time. That will allow you to progress more than this constant hustle culture that we keep hearing about. And I think that this is one of the biggest parts that people miss. Sometimes doing more isn't always the answer. And sometimes it's actually the thing that's getting in the way. And I need you to take that in, because we always think that to get to where we want to be, it requires doing so much more. But it requires you to do stuff, but with intention. And that doesn't always mean doing more. That means focusing on the right things for you and putting your effort into that. It doesn't mean doing absolutely everything under the sun. And it doesn't mean that doing less means that you're quitting or you're failing or you're not doing enough. It means that you're choosing what actually matters for you to build that life that you want. And I think that this comes a lot from comparing to other people, because we might see other people doing a lot of things, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're doing them well or that it's serving them well. And that's what you need to understand, because life moves in seasons. You've got to remember that every season has a reason. And it's so true. So those different seasons require different things from you. But there's one thing that always stays with those seasons, and that's having a direction and an intention with it. And I lost that myself at points. Through my own experience, I tried to do too much at points. I tried to work on too many different things. I tried to focus on too many different things in my own fitness journey, doing 75 hard, preparing for a marathon, running a marathon after completing 75 hard last year. And what happened? I got injured. And that's a prime example physically. In terms of work, I tried to focus on different things in my work. I tried to do absolutely everything and work 16, 17, 18-hour days alongside everything else that I was doing and juggling. And what happened? I burnt out. I couldn't create well anymore. My physical health suffered. I fainted a couple of times. And you know what the doctor said? You're doing too much. And like I said before, you might not experience things like that. That's a different case. But you definitely won't be able to build the life that you want by focusing on too much. The most successful people in the world will tell you to focus on one thing, pick that thing, and go all in on it. And it's true. When you do too much, the quality suffers. You're not going to be as productive with that thing that you really want to focus on, because you've got all these other things that you're focusing on. And when I focused on less things and I slowed down technically, things got clearer. My work got better. And most importantly, I felt better. And you know what happens when you feel better? You perform better in everything. So what I need you to understand, probably the most important takeaway from this video, is that when your attention isn't split, things will start to compound. Psychology shows that multitasking doesn't work. And that when we focus on fewer things, we tend to do a lot better at them. And it's as simple as that. So when you have, for example, fewer goals, that doesn't mean that you're not ambitious. It just means that the goals that you're focusing on are actually going to get all your attention. And what happens is that you'll actually follow through with those goals. When you write a list of 1 million goals, it's a lot harder to achieve those, because there's so many that require so many different angles, so many different attention from you. And it's a lot harder to follow through with those because there's too much going on. Whereas if you have fewer goals, you're more likely to follow through and do them well. When you have fewer rules, for example, you're more likely to be consistent with them because you haven't got so many things that you need to tick off and think about. You've only got a few rules that are actually going to move you forward and help you progress, and you'll stay consistent with them. If you look at the fitness industry, for example, the people who have so many different rules in their diet, in their fitness routine, they don't tend to stick to it because they have so many things that they need to remember and juggle that it gets too much and they quit. The people who have fewer good rules stick to it and get the results because it's more sustainable and they feel good when they're doing it. And when you have fewer expectations, you naturally have better mental health. And that's not a light topic, because the better your mental health, the better everything else in your life. As all of the Stoics will tell you, the one thing that you can control in life is your mind. And that's it. You can't control anything else apart from your mind. Even your physical body, there are some things that are out of your control. Yes, you can eat well. Yes, you can train well. You can sleep well. But there are some things that might happen that are just out of your control. But your mind, that's the only thing you can control. So having fewer expectations, but quality expectations, is going to improve your mental health. And that's going to improve absolutely everything else in your life. So remember that. Because when you focus on less, you start doing more, just better. I always like to give you practical advice as well, because that's you can actually take that away and start implementing it in your life. So the first and most important thing that I want you to take away today and start doing is, rather than having all these things that you're trying to focus on one real priority at a time. Because if everything matters, then nothing does. That's what you need to remember. So when you stop watching this video, go away and focus on the one real priority that you really want to focus on right now and start getting to work on that. Whether that's getting into shape, whether that's starting to build your business, whether that's wanting to get into a relationship. Get that one real priority, get the direction with it, the intention with it, and start just going for it. And you need to start. It's all good thinking about these things and writing them down, but just start and figure it out, because you will. The second thing that I want you to do is start removing before you start adding things going forward. So most people don't need another habit. You don't. All these things telling you to do absolutely everything at once. Add an ice bath into your morning routine, start taking this supplement, start doing this habit because it's going to make you more productive at work. You don't need more habits. You need fewer, but good quality ones. So start looking at your routine currently and have a look at the things that are not serving you as well, or the things that you don't really need to focus on right now, but they're just in there because it makes you feel productive. And keep the ones that you do need to focus on. Like I said, that one real priority that you have, the things that are going to contribute to that, keep those, and remove anything that doesn't really add to your plate in a positive way. The third thing that I want you to focus on is what I like to call space before speed. So what does that mean? Well, give yourself space, essentially. Rather than thinking speed, let me do everything at once, take a step back. Have thinking time. Incorporate that into your week. Incorporate things like walking. Walking is one of the best things that you can do for your mind, for your body, but also for your clarity and conviction. Because it allows you to think. It allows you to de-stress your body, to take your body out of fight or flight, to regulate your nervous system. And that is going to allow you to think clearer and to be more productive as a result. So have that space before speed, have that thinking time, because clarity doesn't come from speed, it comes from space. So give yourself some. And then the last thing that I want you to do is measure your progress by how life feels. We've become so focused on metrics, on things that we need to measure constantly, but we don't ever measure the things that we can't measure. And you can be like, what does that even mean? Well, some of the most important things for building the life that you want, you can't actually measure. So think about that. Happiness, fulfillment, love, for example. That's just 3 things off the top of my head that I've mentioned that you can't literally measure. If you're a content creator, you can measure the metrics of how many followers you've got for the week, of how many likes, engagement, things like that. In a business, you can measure your finances, your revenue, your profits, your loss. And of course, you need to track those as well. But in order to build the life that you want and a life that feels good to you, you need to start measuring that. And how does this actually feel? Because if it doesn't feel good, you're not going to stick to it. And if you're focusing on one thing that doesn't feel good, then focus on another thing that does. And start thinking about that, because that's what's going to make this sustainable. If life feels better, you're probably moving forward. Even if it looks a bit quieter, if it looks a bit boring. You saw in my last video, my days are not that exciting. But they feel good to me because I'm working on things that I enjoy and that bring me fulfillment. And that's what building the life that you want means.